Welcome to Learning English from People.
Suharto, the man who built and broke a nation. To some, he was the father of development. He built roads and schools for millions of people. He made Indonesia strong. But to others, he was a killer. A man who stole billions of dollars and ruled with fear. How can one person be both a hero and a monster? This is the story of Suharto, the smiling general who controlled Indonesia for more than 30 years. His story is the story of his country, with all its good and all its bad. Suharto's life did not begin with power or money. He was born in 1921 in a small village called Kemusuk on the island of Java. His house was made of bamboo. When he was a boy, Indonesia was not its own country. It was a colony of the Netherlands called the Dutch East Indies. Suharto's world was small, a life of rice farms and village traditions. His family life was not stable. His parents separated soon after he was born. He moved a lot, living with his mother, his father, and other relatives. He did not have one family home. This difficult childhood taught him to be quiet, careful, and to watch others. He did not learn about politics or fighting the Dutch. Instead, he learned about the struggles of everyday life and old Javanese beliefs. These early lessons would shape the man he became. Suharto's journey to power started with a uniform. He finished middle school and worked for a short time at a bank. But one day, he fell off his bicycle and tore his only work clothes. He lost his job. With no other options, he joined the Dutch colonial army in 1940. This was a big change in his life. Soon, World War II came to Asia. Japan invaded Indonesia in 1942. The Dutch army fell apart. Suharto, like many Indonesian soldiers, started working for the Japanese. He was a policeman and then a soldier in a Japanese-trained army. The Japanese taught him a strict military code. He learned to be a strong leader and a tough fighter. He was no longer just a boy from a village. He was becoming a soldier. When Japan lost the war in 1945, Indonesia's leaders, Sukarno and Hatta, declared independence. A new Indonesian army was born, and Suharto joined immediately. For 4 years, they fought a hard war against the Dutch, who tried to take back their colony. Suharto became a good commander. He was smart and respected by his soldiers. His most famous moment was in 1949. He led a surprise attack and took back the city of Yogyakarta for a short time. This was a big victory for the spirit of the Indonesian people. It showed the world that they would not give up. During this time, he also married a woman named Siti Hartana, or Tyne. Their marriage was strong, and they had 6 children together. After Indonesia became a free country, Suharto's career in the army continued to grow. He was quiet and professional. He was not a political man like President Sukarno. He was a soldier who followed orders. He was sent to different parts of the country to stop rebellions. These experiences made him hate 2 groups very much, communists and radical religious fighters. He believed both were dangerous to Indonesia. While he was a commander in central Java, he started to build important friendships. He worked with local businessmen to get money and supplies for his soldiers. This showed that he was good at making deals, but it also got him into trouble for smuggling. For a short time, his career was in danger, but he recovered. By the early 1960s, he was a major general in Jakarta, the capital city. He was in charge of Kostrad, the army's powerful special forces. He was patient. He waited as the country slowly moved toward a big crisis. That crisis exploded on the night of September 30, 1965. Indonesia was in a terrible state. The economy was a disaster. Prices were so high that normal people could not afford food. President Sukarno was trying to balance three powerful groups: the army, nationalist groups, and the Indonesian Communist Party, or PKI. The PKI was huge. It was the biggest communist party in the world outside of a communist country. The army hated the PKI, and the two sides were ready for a fight. Early in the morning on October 1, a small group of army officers made their move. They called themselves the 30 September Movement. They kidnapped 6 of the most powerful generals in the army. They took them to an Air Force base, killed them, and threw their bodies down a well. The group said they were trying to stop a plan by the generals to take over the government. Suharto had incredible luck that night. He was not on the killer's list. His son was sick and he had spent time at a hospital. When he heard the news about the kidnapped generals, he acted fast. He went to his Kostrad headquarters and took control of the confused army. While the plotters did nothing, Suharto sent his soldiers to key places in Jakarta. He took control of the city without a fight. That night, he went on the radio. He told the nation that there was a plot against President Sukarno. He said he was in charge of the army, and he would stop the people responsible. What happened next was one of the worst mass killings of the 20th century. Suharto and the army immediately blamed the Communist Party, the PKI, for killing the generals. With quiet support from the United States and other Western countries, the army began a hunt. They wanted to destroy the PKI completely. The army, with help from other groups, started to hunt communists. The violence was terrible. All over the country, people were killed. They were not killed with guns in a war. They were killed in their villages with knives and clubs. Anyone suspected of being a communist, or even having a communist friend, was in danger. No one knows the exact number, but maybe 500,000 to 1 million people died. Another 1.5 million were put in prison without a trial. The PKI was totally destroyed. With the communists gone, Suharto slowly and carefully took power from President Sukarno. He did not want to look like a man who was stealing power. He was very clever. He supported student protesters who were on the streets, demanding that Sukarno step down. He filled the government with his own supporters. He used the army-controlled newspapers and radio to attack Sukarno. The most important moment came on March 11, 1966. Mysterious soldiers surrounded the president's palace. A scared Sukarno was forced to sign a special document. This paper gave Suharto the power to do anything to bring back order. It was the key to total control. Suharto immediately used this power to officially ban the Communist Party. He fired anyone in the government who was still loyal to Sukarno. Sukarno was now a president with no power. 1 year later, Suharto was named the new president. Sukarno was kept as a prisoner in his own home until he died in 1970. Suharto, the quiet man from the village, was now the most powerful man in Indonesia. Suharto called his new government the New Order. He promised it would be different from Sukarno's old order, which he said was full of chaos. His rule was based on 3 simple ideas: stability, development, and security. He used an idea called Pancasila, or the 5 principles of the state. He said everyone had to follow these ideas. Anyone who disagreed was an enemy of the nation. He also gave the military a dual function. This meant that army officers were not just for fighting wars. They were also put in charge of the government. Soldiers became governors, mayors, and managers of big companies. The army was everywhere. It was the foundation of his control. Suharto's greatest success was the economy. When he took power, the country was broke. Prices were rising by over 600% a year. Suharto brought in a team of smart economists who had studied in America. They were called the Berkeley Mafia. They opened Indonesia to the world. They invited foreign companies to invest money and they got help from other countries. The change was amazing. The economy grew very fast for 30 years. The government built new roads, ports, and even a satellite system to connect all of Indonesia's thousands of islands. They helped farmers grow more rice. Soon, Indonesia, a country that used to buy rice from others, could grow enough for all its people. This was a huge achievement. Suharto also built thousands of new schools and health clinics. Life became better and longer for millions of Indonesians. For people who had only known poverty, Suharto was a hero. He was their father of development. But this development had a dark side. This new Indonesia had no freedom. Suharto created a fake democracy. There were elections, but his party, Golkar, always won. The other political parties were weak and controlled by the government. If you spoke against the government, you could go to jail, or you could disappear. The newspapers could not write the truth. If they did, the government would shut them down. In the 1980s, army death squads killed thousands of suspected criminals without a trial. When Muslim protesters spoke out against the government, soldiers shot and killed many of them. His government was also cruel to the country's Chinese minority. They were forced to change their names to sound Indonesian, and their schools and newspapers were closed. Suharto was also practical and cruel in his foreign policy. He made peace with Indonesia's neighbors and helped start ASEAN, a group of Southeast Asian nations. Because he was strongly against communism, he became an important friend to the United States during the Cold War. This friendship gave him the freedom to do terrible things. In 1975, he invaded the small island of East Timor. He was afraid it would become a communist country. With support from the US and Australia, his army took over. The Indonesian occupation of East Timor lasted for 24 years. It was a time of terrible violence, hunger, and sickness. More than 100,000 Timor's people died. This invasion is one of the darkest parts of Suharto's story. Over the years, a third part of Suharto's rule became clear: corruption. The economic growth he created also made it easy for him and his friends to steal. Suharto, his family, and a small circle of friends controlled the entire economy. His 6 children grew up to become billionaires. Their companies got special deals from the government. They controlled everything, from roads to cars to movies. Businesses had to give money to charities run by the Suharto family to get help from the government. By the end of his rule, an international group called Suharto the most corrupt leader in the world. They said he and his family stole between $15 and $35 billion. The father of development was also the country's biggest thief. By the 1990s, Suharto's power was starting to weaken. The economy had created a new middle class in the cities. These people were educated, and they were tired of the government's control and the family's greed. The Cold War was over, so Suharto was no longer as important to the West. Other countries started to criticize him for his bad human rights record. Even some people in the military were unhappy. They felt that Suharto's children were taking all the best business opportunities. Suharto tried to get more support from religious Muslims, even going on a famous trip to Mecca. But these were small changes. The whole system was becoming old and weak. The final hit did not come from a political enemy. It came from the world economy. In 1997, a big financial crisis hit Asia. Indonesia was hurt the worst. The value of its money, the rupiah, crashed. Companies went bankrupt. The economy, which had been growing for 30 years, shrank by almost 14%. Millions of people lost their jobs and fell back into poverty. The economic success that was the reason for Suharto's power was gone. Suddenly, people saw him not as the answer to their problems, but as the cause of them. The end came very quickly. In early 1998, university students started protesting all over the country. In May, soldiers shot and killed 4 students in Jakarta. The city exploded in anger. For days, there were riots and fires. Many Chinese-owned businesses were burned down. Thousands of students took over the parliament building. They all shouted for one thing: Suharto must resign. Suharto, who was out of the country, came back to find he had no support left. His oldest friends and allies refused to be in his new government. On the morning of May 21, 1998, Suharto appeared on television. He spoke for only a few minutes. He said he was resigning as president. After 32 years, the rule of the smiling general was over. Suharto lived his last 10 years at his home in Jakarta. He was hidden from the public. Many people tried to take him to court for corruption, but it never happened. His lawyers always said he was too sick to go to trial. He had several strokes and was very ill. He died on January 27, 2008, at the age of 86. The government gave him a large state funeral. The country's reaction showed how divided people were about him. Today, Indonesians still argue about Suharto. In recent years, some people have started to feel nostalgic. A popular phrase is, "Pi kabar, penak jamankutu." It is Javanese and it means, "How are you? My time was better, right?" For some, especially older people, the stability and economic safety of Suharto's time seems better than the noisy and sometimes difficult democracy of today. They remember the man who built their schools and roads, but others can never forget. They remember the people who were killed, the activists who disappeared, the stolen billions, and the decades of living in fear. Suharto was a man of two sides: the village boy who became a powerful ruler, the nation builder who was also a nation thief. He left behind a country that was more modern and educated, but he also left a country hurt by violence and corruption. The final story of Suharto may never be finished, as Indonesia continues to live with the memory of the complex and cruel man who was its master for a generation.